Talking with Jerry.
About the March on Washington, man.
Right. Well, the March on Washington was in the last year of his life. And he was kind of, this is a good thing, but I don't know how this is going to turn out. And of course, at the March on Washington, you see the pictures, there were black people, white people, people came from all over the country, but no one knew what was going to happen. So a little unknown fact that people don't know is that because President Kennedy was concerned about violence, the 82nd Airborne was called into Washington, D.C. They were flown in from, I think they were in North Carolina, and they were flown in to be staged around Washington and Virginia in case there was any violence or problems at the March on Washington. Of course, we know the March on Washington was pulled off, and Kennedy watched it on TV, and after King's speech, he said, somebody get over to the march. I want this John Lewis, who was a young guy then, college student. I want John Lewis here. I want Martin Luther King here. I want Whitney M. Young, who was the head of the Urban League then, and Walter Reuther, the head of the Automobile Association. All of the unions who backed the March on Washington. He wanted all of them to come to the White House, and he thanked them for such a great event and said, "This will empower me to do more in the area of civil rights." So, it just made him feel so good that this march that had been planned came off, and it was covered, of course, as you know, on television and all over the world. And Kennedy, took that to fight more for civil rights.
Now, Terry, at that time, that was heavy security for that march. Was the same security on the same level for the Million Man March?
Well, good question. Was the 82nd Airborne, or was the U.S. military or higher government agencies involved as far as being on standby in case something happened during the Million Man March? I don't know of any official documents or statements that have been released in history that say they were, because they wouldn't want to say it. But I can guarantee you, if not the 82nd Airborne, other military units were all around Washington, D.C., ready to be dispatched in the case that something went awry during the Million Man March, which I'm proud to say I was one of the people who promoted the Million Man March for Minister Farrakhan.
And it's still on record as one of the biggest events in D.C.?
Oh, yeah. As far as people, it was well over 1 million people. The March on Washington had between 220, they estimate maybe 250,000 people. But the Million Man March was the largest gathering, it is believed, in the Washington D.C. area for any type of a gathering, as a large number of people.
But the Civil Rights March back in this day, 250,000, Jerry, we'll take that.
Oh, of course. Now, one thing, some people want to put a cloud on President Kennedy. I just want to show, this is the excellent video you could rent, 13 Days, with Kevin Costner, and it's just all about what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's actually over 2 hours, about 2 hours and 20 minutes. I used to show it to my students. They were on edge. They loved it. And some people criticize President Kennedy because of something called the Bay of Pigs, where the U.S. government tried to reinvade Cuba when Kennedy first became president. But he did not put that plan in place. His predecessor, Dwight Eisenhower, did. And the CIA kind of, went ahead with something without really giving Kennedy all the information. And he got blamed as being a mark on his record. The other thing is the Vietnam War. Some people say, oh, he got us into Vietnam, and that is totally not true. This is an editorial response that I wrote that was published by the New York Daily News many years ago, because this was something that someone had said. The reality is that President Kennedy never sent troops to Vietnam. He sent advisors. And in his writings, he said, because he had been involved in war, we are not going to get involved in the Vietnamese conflict between North and South Vietnamese and China. I don't even really want to give financial resources, but I will send advisors there to train the South Vietnamese army to fight so they can be free. And unfortunately, President Kennedy was assassinated. President Johnson became president, who was vice president, and we saw an escalation of the Vietnam War that lasted for a number of years, and we lost over 66,000 American troops. End of part 2. JFK,